Welcome to another edition of Biblical Errancy Commentary, the series that takes a critical look at Scripture, pointing out its numerous errors, contradictions, and fallacies. This program teaches a kind of Sunday school in reverse by giving you the biblical information that you should have heard but didn't. With millions of Americans hearing a totally one-sided presentation of the Bible, balance is greatly needed. Only when people are given both sides of an issue can a truly objective analysis be possible. And here to provide the alternative perspective is the editor of Biblical Errancy Newsletter, Mr. Dennis McKenzie.
Welcome to the 36th edition of Biblical Errancy Commentary. We're pleased you've joined us. During this program, we'll continue our discussion of why the Messianic prophecies do not apply to Jesus. 11 were discussed in our last program. Our 12th example is the 9th verse in the 41st Psalm, which says, quote, "Yea, mine own familiar friend in whom I trusted, which did eat of my bread, has lifted up his heel against me," unquote. This does not represent a reference to Judas by Jesus, as many claim, because A, the same speaker says in the 4th verse, quote, "O Lord, be gracious to me, heal me, for I have sinned against thee." Jesus sinned. And B, the same speaker says 2 verses later in verse 11, quote, "I know that thou favor me, because my enemy does not triumph over me," unquote. In view of the fact that the enemies of Jesus killed and entombed him, it's safe to conclude that they did triumph over him. 13th, the 72nd Psalm is judged by apologists to be messianic, even though the very first line presents major problems. That line says, quote, "Give the king thy judgments, O God, and thy righteousness to the king's son," unquote. The problems are, A, if the king's son is Jesus, who was the father of Jesus, who was also a king? B, if the king is Jesus himself, when did Jesus have a son, and when was Jesus a king? C, how could Jesus be given righteousness when he already had it? In fact, how could God give Jesus anything when Jesus already had everything, if he's God? D, in addition, the 4th verse says, quote, "He shall judge the poor of the people, he shall save the children of the needy, and shall break in pieces the oppressor," unquote. Jesus never judged the poor of the people, never saved the children of the needy, or broke the oppressor into pieces. E, and finally, the 7th and 8th verses say, quote, "In his days shall the righteous flourish an abundance of peace, and he shall have dominion from sea to sea," unquote. The righteous did not flourish in the days of Jesus. There was no peace, and he never ruled from sea to sea. 14th, one of the most famous of all messianic prophecies is in the 7th chapter of Isaiah. The crucial 14th verse says, quote, "Behold, a virgin shall conceive and bear a son," unquote. Many problems accompany this verse. A, Jewish scholars have repeatedly noted that in Hebrew this actually reads, quote, "Behold, the young woman," not virgin, "is with child, and bears a son, and calls his name Emmanuel," unquote. Bible forgers changed the Hebrew word almah, which means maid, which means young woman or maid, to virgin. Exodus 2:8 and Proverbs 30:19 show that almah means maid, not virgin. The actual Hebrew word for virgin is Bethulah. B. It should also be kept in mind that whenever the Bible wants to say virgin in a legal context where precision is necessary, as in, for instance, Leviticus 21:3, Deuteronomy 22:19, 22:28, and Ezekiel 44:22, it always uses the word Bethulah, never Almah. On page 23 in his book entitled The Jew and the Christian Missionary, Gerald Siegel says, quote, "The Hebrew word for virgin is Bethulah. The word Bethulah is used in an explicit legal sense, leaving no question as to its meaning. While Almah does not define the state of virginity of a woman, Bethulah, by contrast, does. One would therefore," and I'm still quoting Siegel, "reasonably expect that if Isaiah 7:14 refers specifically to a virgin, the prophet would have used the technical term Bethulah so as to leave no doubt as to the significance and meaning of his words." Unquote. C. Suppose that Almah did mean virgin. The verse, "a virgin shall conceive," would depict nothing more than a virgin woman conceiving the first time she had intercourse, a very normal event. Such an interpretation is much more reasonable than introducing a radical new doctrine like a virgin birth.